everybody, and welcome to another edition of Seminoles Daily. I'm your host, Rob Krause, wishing you all a happy Saturday. That's right, it is Saturday. Hope you are enjoying a good summer weekend. Hope you are getting out and about, and hope you are cramming in the fun. Because as we've been mentioning, that the summer unfortunately is dwindling a little bit to a close. But the good news, the bittersweet, if you will, it's bitter that the summer's coming to a close, but the sweet part is always that it means the start of football season. And that's right, we are count it, 3 Saturdays away from the start of the 2026 Florida State football season. And I know there's been some ambivalence and some apathy and some general meh and some malaise from a lot of the fan base and scribes and so on, because we're not necessarily expecting some high expectations from this team this year. But trust me, I believe in 3 weeks, a lot of you are going to be like, I'm going to check the game. I'm going to check the game. It's Saturday night. It's the CW. Where else do I want to be? What else do I want to be doing? But watching the Knowles and what should hopefully be at least one of a couple of wins at the very least for this program. If they, I'll tell you right now, I know we're 3 weeks away. We're about 2 weeks away from our preview, 3 weeks away from our preview third. If they do lose to New Mexico State, then I don't think Mike Norvell is getting past the day, like the night. I think you are getting a press release at 10:35. Mike Norvell has been relieved of his duties as head coach of Florida State. But good news is I don't think we're losing to New Mexico State. But a lot of that is going to depend on the offense this season. That's right. So I thought a good idea for this Saturday is let's actually kind of assess some grades and give some grades to the offense of your 2026 Florida State Seminoles. But before we get to that, as always, need to make sure I'm taking care of my peeps. Thanking all of you who've continued to like, subscribe, share, comment, interact. Encourage you to continue to do so. Encourage you to share the page. Reminder, we go every single day at 11 a.m. talking the Knowles, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think we've got a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. I don't think we have any true ugly as we get into our offensive grades here. There's nothing particularly that stands out to me as being ugly for the time being. I think at the end of the year, we'll reassess our grades, we'll reassess our projections, and then we can kind of say, like, okay, this was definitely part of the ugly. All right, who knows? Maybe they surpassed. Maybe they even, did well. But again, I don't think it's very ugly. We've got some good, and I don't even say it's really bad, because it depends on what your definition of bad is. Okay, because we're going on this, the scale of A to F as far as your grading, and we'll start with the QBs. And my grade for the QBs is a C. That's right, a C. It's an average. That was always the goal of me in growing up in high school. Was hey, C's, man. Hey, C's get degrees. Okay, so if you're wondering what the level is, hey, C's get degrees, baby. That's solid 2.0. Not falling off, or 2.5, whatever. I don't know, whatever the modern GPA equivalent is. But either way, not showing off, not falling behind, just right in that meaty part of the curve, as George Costanza used to say about the average here. But reason being, let's kind of run through it here. So we got Ashton Daniels, that's your QB1. We've talked about Ashton before. We know pretty much kind of what he is. He is a journeyman. He's a veteran. It's his third program in 3 years. He started out at Stanford, then went to Auburn for a year, where he kind of backed up, had a couple starts at the end of the season, and then he's come here to Florida State. It was not by any means, from what you can infer, that he was the first pick or the first choice of this program from the portal. I'm sure they made some offers to some other guys, but in this world of 2026 Florida State and what you can offer and what is attractive, he was pretty much the best value and the best bang for the buck. We'll just say it there. Again, the pros with Ashton: he is a very strong runner. He's a very punishing runner. He is good with his feet. And if this is an offense that's going to want to run the ball and take advantage of a mobile quarterback that can run the ball, he would certainly fit that mold. The limitations being, of course, arm-wise, not exactly the strongest arm, not the best downfield thrower, better on slants and kind of quick stuff, but that's kind of the extent of his abilities. But in defense, he has played at Stanford, which was not exactly recruiting at a high level either, even though he did have a talent in Iman Umar. But hey, look, that's just one guy. But again, Goes to Auburn. Auburn, Hugh Freeze was an absolute, disaster last year. The coach was on the hot seat from the jump, and he preferred to play golf on Sunday than actually study film and work with his QB. So he gets fired. Ashton comes in, shows a little bit of promise at times, and so on. But again, not A-level ability by any stretch. 24 touchdowns, 22 picks. It's kind of a bit of a turnover issue with them over the years. But look, that's where we are. That kind of brings it around. The rest of the room is best described as, good floor, potential high ceiling. I think Kevin Sperry, we know his ability. He's still young, still kind of a little wet behind the ears, but has shown some promise per the coaches, per the staff over the off seasons. Put on a little bit of weight, a little more of a grown man. Does have, I think, the better arm strength and the better ability to get the ball downfield than Ashton Daniels, but just hasn't quite the experience and veteranship is what I think ultimately truly was made the decision. I know they made things about he turned the ball over more than Ashton did in the spring. Ashton's a little bit more with the playbook and understanding, which I don't necessarily buy. I think it just simply comes down to this. Ashton Daniels has got a whole lot of starts under his belt, and Kevin Sperry has none. And at the end of the day, if you're Mike Norvell, if you're any coach for that matter, when you've got a quarterback competition, you're usually going to go with the guy, unless there's a clear cut difference and a clear cut favorite. You're usually going to go with the guy who's got the starting experience, and that's why Ashton Daniels is QB1, and that's why he's getting the crack of the first season. And after that, we got, of course, Malachi Marshall. If you're familiar with the show, we are very high on Malachi Marshall's ceiling. We think he throws the ball the best of anybody. He's got the anticipation. He's got the arm strength. He can read a defense. He's got the footwork. He's got the pocket of presence. His biggest drawbacks are, again, physical. He needs to put on some weight, needs to put on some strength. And he also needs to, have a certain level against FCS major Power Four FBS competition. Started out in the FCS level, the lower level, then JUCO. So it's not exactly a long history of experience. But the good news is he's got 3 years to play. So he can, develop into that role for Mike or whoever, God, again, Mike gets fired, whoever comes in after him. Either way, that's kind of why. So again, it's why we put it a C, because you got some, kind of an average at best starter, and you've got some high ceiling guys, but with some good floors. But again, just no real experience to really go off of to get that. So that's your quarterbacks. That's a C average. We'll say 75% right there. So that gives us back to the O line. Grade the big uglies. We're going to give this O line a B minus. That's right, a B minus, because we think there is some top line talent. We've said before, Xavier Chaplin, I think, is an NFL talent. Andre Otto is just a veteran, just been in the game for a long time. Nate Paps, we're big on his veteran leadership and versatility. Brain Joyner's got the size and so on, and there's just kind of the other rotating depth pieces. Again, the biggest issue with the O line that we're going to have the question about every single time you bring a brand new offensive line in is, what is the cohesion? What is the communication? How fast can they pick up this offense? How fast can they get to learning to work with each other? Because again, that's a big integral part of building an offensive line, is experience, not just in the game, but with each other. So that kind of takes this down to a B minus. Again, it's not a C, because I think you have legitimate next level talent in guys like Chaplin, and I do think that Paps can make some headway there too. I think Joyner's got really good next level ability too. But again, it's just the big question is cohesion, experience, working together, working with the offense. What can you do? I think this line's kind of better at run blocking, I believe, is what my, again, my preseason prediction. I think they did a good job with just establishing an offense that can run the ball. And I think you got some good road raiders and some size. Pass blocking is going to be a question mark that we're not going to get answered until really you play SMU. That's just where that is. But overall, again, a B minus, I think, is a pretty stellar grade for this offensive line. Overall, talent, but you got some questions on depth, and you got some questions about really just the camaraderie and the cohesion that goes into it. I think Herb Hand is a good offensive line coach. Like I thought the offensive line last year was good for the most part. The biggest issues for them was just kind of, one guy goes down and the depth issues. So, which goes back to why I don't love Herb Hand as a recruiter. I don't necessarily think he's a great offensive line recruiter, as evidenced by the current class and the previous class and so on. I think it is just a poor decision by this front office to continue to say that we're just going to have to get our line in the portal, but we've already kind of talked about there. But just judging this year, this unit 2026, I'm going to give them a solid B minus. Again, we'll see how it goes the year, but good expectations that they could be a little bit better than last year, but at the very least be serviceable to what they're trying to do. Which brings us to the group that's going to be running behind them, and this is your rock solid A group on this team. I think this is a very good group of running backs. I think Chroma is an absolute beast, which is why you paid him a lot of money to come here, why you paid him a lot of money to stay here in this class. I think he is ready to level up to becoming the featured back and becoming the workhorse of this unit. I think he's got the ability both in getting through the line. I think he can beat you on the outside. I think his hands are good. I think he's got the ability to get open out of the backfield. I think he's a load to bring down. And I think he really steps up this year into becoming an all purpose, all around a guy back that could be competing should everybody stay healthy and should the offense go how we think it goes and what they're trying to accomplish and do. I think he's a guy that can make some serious competition for first, second team all conference. I really do. I think he's got that ability. And you got Trey Wisner behind him. Now Wisner is recent update battling a little bit of a minor injury. Also, kind of some reports that he may have been passed over on the depth chart by the likes of Sam Singleton, who I think is also ready for a big breakout. I think Singleton has that, watching the games last year and the time that Singleton did get touches, he showed some real burst. He showed burst through the line, showed the ability to get open, showed the ability to, contribute in the running game, as passing game as far as blocking. Maybe not the, strongest guy, but overall, I think he could really, be a nice change of pace. The old third down back, as we used to call it back in the day, used to be you had your third down back, and that was the guy, the scat back that would come in at the backfield for safety valves and things like that. But I think he can be a little bit more than that. But overall, again, if Wisner is healthy, I think he gives you a nice veteran presence, 10, 15 plays, gives you maybe a burst, maybe he breaks one long, maybe keeps chains moving, but just gives Oos and Singleton a break if that's the case. Either way, this is a rock solid group. It's an A plus group. It's okay, not an A plus, excuse me, an A group, But hey, you spent the money on this group. You're trying to be a running team first. That's what you want to do. So you need the backs to do it. And I think you got the backs to do it. Which then, in closing, we will close out with the guys who are going to catch the ball, the wide receivers and the tight ends. Now, I feel a little cheap about this because it's an A minus, and I know it's kind of cheap because I'm combining both, and the minus comes from the tight end group. Because if it was just doing receivers, I'd give that group a rock solid A, maybe even an A plus. But I got to put the tight ends because hey, look, I only got four things on the rundown, so take with a grain of salt here. But I think you have a dynamic rock unit at receiver. And what I mean by that is I think you got a little bit of everything. You got the established elite number one ace in Deuce Robinson, Agent Zero. He is your ace number one. He's the best player you have on your team, and he is the one guy that this entire team, when you go out on offense against that defense, you can say, look, that dude is just as good, if not better than your best player. And that includes anybody on the schedule. That includes Miami. That includes Bama and SMU and Clemson and so on. Is that Deuce Robinson is a first-round NFL draft pick. And I will go on saying that right now. I think he is a first-round night one NFL draft pick. He's got the size. He's got the hands. He's got the route running ability. He's got the physicality to block, push a guy down the field, push a guy off him, break a tackle, got the ability to go up and get the ball, bring it in with hands. Again, he had one unfortunately bad bobble against Virginia that kind of maybe turned the season a different way. But other than that, man, last year he was just an absolute ace. Goes up, bails out the quarterback. So he's an ace. Behind him, you got Mekhi Danzy. Again, Talked about Mr. Danzy before. He is an absolute speedster and a burner that can just outrun everybody. He is a legitimately great deep threat. He had a lot of nice deep balls last year. We are working on this year his route running and becoming an all around receiver, which I think he's going to do. I think he does level up to a better all around guy, particularly at the seams and the crossing routes, where I think he could really, really do some damage there. I think just given his speed, I think he's got that ability. If he just can really work on getting in and out of his breaks and getting in and out of cutting, knowing to cut the routes off and so on, things we've talked about before about his growth as an all-around receiver. He provides that dynamic. And then you got, just some young studs like Javen Boggs and Jason Lopez and Devin Carter, all three guys that'll compete for that slot role and, you know, slot there, the X, the Y, the Z's, all that stuff of just getting open and backing up Mackay and Deuce. I think you got three young studs that can really, really make some noise this coming year. They've already been talking up Lopez and Carter. Devin Carter, Dexter Carter's kids in the genes, can really kind of do some stuff there. The reason why the tight end brings them down is because, well, unfortunately, you weren't able to re-sign and keep Randy Pittman, who I really thought was a very nice piece of your offense last year and a very integral part. And again, don't want to rip him for that Clemson drop that did kind of maybe turn the game around, because overall he was a absolute, Swiss Army knife, exceptional player. And I get not necessarily keeping him. Maybe maybe couldn't afford him and what you're trying to do. And so he goes to SMU, and I have a bad feeling he's going to kind of light you up on Labor Day Monday night. But the guys you brought in behind him, you got Serio Riles from ECU. Potential. The best way I can describe the tight end room, kind of similar to the O line or the backups at the quarterback room. You got a bunch of unknowns. You got guys that have flashes and guys that have shown some potential ability. So you got a fairly high floor. You just don't know what the ceiling is. Like I said, I think Serio Riles could be a very nice piece, particularly down the seams, down the middle of the field. I think he really excels there. I think he's a half decent blocker. I think he can just give you a good outlet. And then after that, well, you got Landon Thomas. We talked about Landon Thomas before, is that it's year 3. It's on him to make the step up. If he steps up and he levels up to the flashes that we saw this freshman year or the flashes we saw last year, like the play against Pitt to close out the half, if he can level up to that, then I think this room can really be dynamic. And you got, Chase Lofton, who's kind of been battling injuries, but has the physical size, I think, to be a real, addition, particularly in the blocking game, but also could be a real weapon in the red zone, given, again, just his sheer size of like 6'6", could put on some weight and muscle out there. So again, it's not proven potential, but it's there. And if they can rise up and they can level up, I think you've got a pretty good overall pass catching skill room between receiver and tight end that would take it from an A- to an A+. But that's just kind of how the preseason rules are. So preseason, grades are shaking out. So again, to bring it back and reminder, we have the quarterbacks we've got as a C. We've got O-line as a B-. We've got the running back rooms as a solid A. And we've got the wide receiver tight ends as an A-. Again, largely because, unfortunately, the tight ends just aren't proven. So if we averaging that out, you're at about 85. So you're at a rock solid B overall on the offense. That's the grades we're getting. It's a rock solid B. Now I think people say, "Oh, you're crazy, Rod. You're being a homer." A B offense. Look, a above average offense has sort of been Mike Norvell's kind of calling card for the most part when his teams are good, right? It was a good offense in 22. It was a good offense in 23. It was a very poor offense in 24. And it was a good offense last year in 25. It was the defense that just routinely kind of really hampered you a lot in critical, particularly in that swoon. Um, so I don't think it's, out of the range to say that this is a solid B offense. I would say closer to a B- than they are an A. If I'm being, the realistic optimist, is I would say, look, I think you're closer to 80% than you are 90%. But look, that's potential. That there's growth there. It's all about the young guys stepping up. It's all about who emerges at the end of the year. If Ashton Daniels is giving you A+ effort and you're winning 8, 9 games, that's awesome. If Kevin Sperry or Malachi Marshall are playing and they're giving you A+ effort and you're still putting an offense, that's even better because that's future prospects. So little things to look at. O line, again, just how much cohesion and units do they have? Running back, you're rock solid, and wide receiver, tight end, you're also rock solid there. So again, that's where we are. Uh, Solid B on this offense. We'll do defense tomorrow, which, looking at my grades, you might think I'm a little crazy there too, because I might be a little favorable. Again, the thing I'm going to emphasize as we close here, and probably emphasize tomorrow, is that I think, and I've said this before, and it'll be a common thread in my preview. I think the top line talent on this team is good. I think this top line on the talent in this team is good enough to win you 6 to 8 games at the surface. It is, again, the issue that is plagued Mike Norvell is the depth and the development behind that. Where if somebody gets hurt, somebody gets injured, you're down to just a real scrap heap bottom barrel of guys because you haven't recruited well and you haven't really developed well. So, but that's going to be the conversation as we kind of get closer to kickoff. But for now, this was our offensive grades. Tell me what you think. Where am I crazy? Where am I wrong? I'm sure everybody's going to have their opinions there. We will do the defense tomorrow. That'll be 11 a.m. Seminoles Daily on YouTube at 11 a.m. We'll do our defensive grades and so on. But this is the offense. Everybody, please enjoy the rest of your Saturday because, hey, look, it's the it's really when you break it down, it's the third to last Saturday that we've got no football because that's it. We only got 3 more Saturdays left without football. So enjoy the peace in that way. But everybody, again, please have a great rest of your weekend. See you tomorrow. See you Sunday morning as we talk defense. We'll close as always with pride. Pride for the offense. Offensive pride, as we say. Go Noles.